What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here, PackersNews.com, live on Facebook late in the day on Tuesday. Not a whole heck of a lot breaking news-wise, but as per tradition, I like to jump on here on Facebook at the end of the day and see what's on your mind, see what's going on there, the land of Packer fandom. In the comments section, Russell checking in with a yo. What's up, Russell? Thanks for joining us. Our positional previews at PackersNews.com continue. Stu Courtney putting up the running back position a little while ago, so make sure you check that out. Breakdown of the position battles, both at running back and fullback. As I've been saying here, sure looks like Stu agrees. Joe Carriage could push Aaron Rutkowski for a gig, if not a roster spot. So that's something to be watching for next week when the Packers report to camp. That's right, it's next week. It's almost here, people. Fargo, what's up? Is Devon House in trouble in this training camp? I don't know about trouble. I mean, I think he's going to have to fight for a roster spot, especially with the infusion of youth. I think a lot of it will depend on how some of those lower-level guys, namely Lindsey Pipkins, a guy who kind of gets forgotten, I think, in the offseason, but was playing pretty well at the end of the year there. I think he'll be heard from, especially since Devon House doesn't really contribute on special teams. Yeah, I think he's going to be fighting for a roster spot, no doubt. What's my favorite part of my job? Doing this every day. And that's not a joke. I'm dead serious. When I actually applied for this job, I had said that, you know, one of the great things about the internet and Green Bay Packers fans is that you can always find somebody ready to talk Packers, whether it's 1 a.m., whether you're around somewhere in the, different parts of the world, where you are. Someone's always ready to talk Packers. That is by far and away my favorite part of the gig. How's Cobb's ankle? Drew will find out next week when the guys report. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts camp on PUP. They've said they're going to be cautious about it, but he should be ready by week 1. I don't think there's any reason to push it. He clearly knows the system, knows what's expected of him. No reason to let him out there until he's 100%. Jeffrey, what's up? How many wide receivers do I think make the roster? Julia, ask me again after, say, 2 weeks of camp when we get an idea of how these rookies are doing on special teams. And I know you spend all summer talking about it, and it does get monotonous and boring as an answer, but it's the truth. The pathway to the roster for those young guys is their contribution on special teams. That might be a bit different this year simply because of the fact that there isn't a whole lot of depth there in front of them. However, the pecking order, so to speak, and how many guys do end up getting kept, a big part of that is going to be about their contributions on teams. Do you think if they have a bad season, Mike McCarthy will be on the chopping block? If they have, it all depends on, quote-unquote, what bad season means and how they're playing at the end of the year. If they have a rough start, like they did a couple years ago when they started out 4-6 and then went on a crazy magical run to run the table, so to speak, I think McCarthy's fine. If they start out hot and then cool off and miss the playoffs, I mean, any scenario where Aaron Rodgers plays 16 games and they miss the playoffs, I think Mike is done. Barring that, if Rodgers is healthy, plays 16 games, they get to the playoffs and do their customary push through the postseason, wherever that may land them, I think McCarthy's job is safe. But a lot will depend on how they're playing and how things are shaping up with the new staff. When do you fly to Green Bay? Next Wednesday. Early Wednesday morning. I'll be there for the shareholders meeting. Sorry, I'm getting a text. See what's going on. Oh boy. What's up, Texas? How you doing? What's your thoughts on the depth for the offensive line, and what do you predict it will look like? Well, it's really up in the air on the right side, although I'm on record here often saying that I think Justin McCray wins the right guard spot. I think right tackle is your big question mark, especially with Brian Bulaga's status up in the air with the ACL injury. I would suspect it's going to come down to that three-way battle between Byron Bell, Kyle Murphy, and Jason Spriggs. I gotta think Bell probably has the most pedigree there and the best chance to start. But it's all going to depend on how he looks in camp. That said, You know, along the rest of the line, obviously they're set on the left side with David Bakhtiari, Lane Taylor, and then in the middle with Corey Lindsley. I think Lucas Patrick will be heard from. He'll probably be an interior swing guy. Somebody asked, I think earlier this week, maybe late last week, what would happen if Bakhtiari went down, who would be the backup. And in that event, I tend to think they'll do what they did last year when they kicked Lane Taylor out to left tackle, unless somebody really emerges. You know, maybe Cole Madison shocks us all. You know, but we'll see. I do think that Taylor would be the backup at left tackle. I can't imagine them putting Byron Bell out there after the horror show that he put on tape at left tackle last year for the Cowboys. Dez or Barwin signing? Jeremy, I'd be surprised at either unless there's an early injury in camp. How improved will the defense be this season? Will it be enough for them to make a Super Bowl run? I think it will be improved. Will it be enough for a run? I think so. I think a big part of that, though, is dependent on how healthy they can stay. Obviously, that's a big part of it each and every year for every Super Bowl contender. How you deal with injuries, where those injuries strike, when they strike, who they strike, etc. A lot to play out there. Anyone expected to skip camp? No, not that I know of. Not that I've heard any rumblings of. The Packers have done a good job as far as contracts, and that's one of the things that they try to keep track of and try to tend to is a salary structure, so to speak. In the locker room, you don't want guys talking about, well, this guy's making so much more than I am, and I'm a better player, etc., etc. When it comes to the tiers of their salary across the team, they've done, I think, a pretty good job of making sure that guys can't start sniping in that regard. What are my thoughts on Bell turning down? Oh, you mean Le'Veon Bell with Pittsburgh? I get it. I understood what his agent was saying when he said, the Steelers want to pay the position and not the player. And I do think, Le'Veon Bell obviously is a special player, but I also understand it from the Steelers' point of view. As a running back, no matter how talented he is only worth so much in today's NFL. And you can win, and they have won without him. Mark my words, we're going to get Dez. Your words are marked. Will Burks start inside? That could mean two things. Will he start as in, start training on the inside, or will he start, i.e. be a starter? I don't think he'll be a starter right away, but if you mean will he begin by learning the inside linebacker spot, yes. They've made that pretty clear. Johnny Jolly coming back. There you go. There's a new one. No more Raji. It's all about Johnny Jolly now. Do you see Blake Martinez taking over a leadership role this season? I actually do, kind of. I think you saw last year how he emerged on the playing field, and I think as the year went on, you saw him maybe not take control of the defense, but you did see him become a little bit more kind of outspoken, a little bit more demonstrative. And it sure sounds like, it's early and they haven't put pads on or anything yet, and they haven't started hitting, but sure sounds like he wants to be the guy. He spoke at length earlier this offseason about wanting to get into that playbook and learn it so he could, command the defense pre-snap. And hey, that's what you want from a guy who, is your leading tackler, is one of the leading tacklers in the NFL, an emerging player. I definitely think he could take on more of a leadership role, no doubt. Are the Packers going 16-0? No. Enough with the Dez talk already. You tell him, man. Will Clinton Dix step up his interception game? Good question, Drew. I would tend to think so, if only because I have to believe that Mike Pettin will put him in better positions to make plays. And I think we saw Clinton Dix become a bit of a victim of Dom Capers being scared to, take too many chances. He had Clinton Dix playing a lot of deep center field where he was able to come up and clean things up after they had been kind of completed and or not in the case of, say, that 3rd and long down in Dallas, etc. We saw plays where they took chances and they blitzed and they left him singled up on somebody, and sometimes those broke big. But for the most part, I think, Leroy Butler swears by the guy and talks about all the time. And you do see this on tape where he's in a position to make plays if he were allowed to play a little closer to the line of scrimmage. Now, maybe that's something that you see a bit more of under Pettine. Regardless of how he's utilized, I think he's a player who has a high ceiling. He just has to find a coach and a scheme that will unlock it. And I do think Pettine will help in that regard. All the trade/cut Clay needs to stop. I tend to agree, if only because no one's trading for the guy and they're not going to cut one of their best defensive players. I understand frustrations from fans looking at his salary, his cap hit, etc., and then the lack of sacks. You know, the production has to be there if you're getting paid that amount of money. I understand that that's the thinking. But you turn on the tape, he's one of their best defensive players. You know, and you know, he's close to so many sacks that, you know, where the quarterback's allowed to just get the ball out of his hands because the coverage isn't there. It all works in concert. So I tend to think you're going to see Clay get a few more sacks this year, be a bit more productive. I don't think you're ever going to see him get back to being the outside pass rushing terror he was early in his career. But he's still a very good player, and they would be foolish to cut him. Which veteran could be a surprise cut? I'm thinking Lance Kendricks. He's definitely a possibility if Emmanuel Byrd or one of those undrafted guys at tight end suddenly emerges. And I've talked about this earlier this summer. You know, the one thing that a guy like Byrd might have is, as far as his bid to kind of make a push for a roster spot and potentially make Kendricks expendable, is, you know, being able to help out on a lot of different special teams. That's somewhere where Kendricks doesn't excel. And he's set to make a couple of $1 million this year. And if you could shave a little bit of that off, maybe, especially in a year where you're looking to pay Aaron Rodgers, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they went that route. Now, do I expect that to happen? Not really, but I would be lying if I said it would, you know, be a surprise, because I don't think it would be. My friend Simon wants to know if you think the Packers made a mistake in passing on Derwin James. You know, ask me in 3 years. I mean, I thought Derwin James was going to be the pick. I put him to the Packers in my mock draft. I understand why they didn't make the selection. I think, you know, Gutekunst talked about it on my podcast. The opportunity to get a first-round pick next year was too good to pass up. I think they made that move with the knowledge that they knew they could jump back up and get a guy they liked in Jair Alexander. So it's hard for me to say that they'll regret it or they made a mistake. But, you know, the players in question will have their careers and we'll get to watch it play out, and we'll see what the answer is. Any of our assistant future head coaches? Yes, Joe Witt Jr. is a future head coach in the NFL. I've been saying it for a few years. It's only a matter of time. Said the same thing about Brian Gutekunst back in 2014. There's a tweet. I got receipts. I knew Gutekunst was going to be a GM, and I know Joe Witt Jr. is going to be a coach. Is Pettine for sure an upgrade over Dom? Yes. How do you think Vita Vea will be? I liked him a lot coming out. We'll see. You know, a lot of this is dependent on where they end up, who their coaches are, who their teammates are, what kind of scheme they're running, etc. There's so many variables. It's impossible to just sit here before they've taken one snap in pads at the NFL level against NFL level competition and say, oh, this guy's going to be a star, or this guy's going to be terrible, or that was a bad pick, etc. Got to let it play out. Do you see us using more 3 tight end sets with how much we've invested in the position? I don't think necessarily, the money spent or the amount put into contracts at a certain position is going to make them say, okay, we've got to play more of these guys. I think it gives them a little bit more flexibility. There's no doubt about it. I think you could see some creativity in that regard. In fact, I did a post years ago about Mike McCarthy in the tight end position. And one of the things he really likes to do when he knows he has the talent at the spot is to kind of mess with defensive coordinators, where he'll come out in a drive, in the same drive, and use 3 tight ends. And as a defensive coordinator, you're sitting there, you watch 3 tight ends in the huddle, and you go, okay, I gotta most likely counter it with a base personnel, right? Either 4 linebackers and 3 down linemen, 4 linebackers if you're 3-4, 4 down linemen, 3 linebackers if you're 4-3. So you counter with the base personnel. So yeah, Mike comes out and maybe runs the ball with those 3 tight ends, but then you go hurry up and then you spread them out, and you've got 3 guys, maybe Jimmy Graham split wide, Mercedes Lewis in line, and Kendricks in the slot. Now all of a sudden you've spread that 4-3 base out, and you've got 2 linebackers or a safety over, Jimmy Graham and Lance Kendricks. Well, good luck. Those guys are pretty athletic, and they've got Aaron Rodgers pulling the trigger. So that's the kind of stuff where, personnel, the ability to get in and out of things, Aaron Rodgers' ability at the line of scrimmage. I think the tight end position could potentially be, a real boon to this club if they can keep everyone healthy and avoid, nuclear meltdowns like we saw from Martellus Bennett last year. Aaron Jones looks like an Allen Rossum on kickoffs. Impressive, Matt. That's an impressive pull. Lacey at right tackle. Yikes. I think Montgomery will be a game changer in the no-huddle offense. Andrew, I tend to agree. I think we've seen glimpses of it if he can just stay on the field. McCarthy made it very clear the frustration with Montgomery is his inability to be available. He hasn't played 16 games in a season yet. But I do think, you'll see him in passing situations, third downs, etc., as a bit of a chess piece. Aaron Rodgers can move him all over the formation, trying to suss out what the defense is trying to do, and to take advantage of it. How far do you think we're going into the playoffs? Alan, I have no idea. Ask me again, say, before week 1, after training camp. I have a better idea about how this team is looking. Is Eddie Lacy considered a bust? I don't think so. I think a better description for Eddie would be a disappointment. I think you saw a lot of potential there that kind of fizzled and was wasted. Ty is better in the slot. Better than what, Matthew? I think he's good in the slot. There's no doubt about that. Ooh, worst draft pick, Pat Lee or Antoine Edwards? I'm going to go with Antoine Edwards on that one. Will we ever get a look at the Packers draft board? I'm trying. Been trying for 44 years. Hasn't happened yet, but I'll let you know if it does. What does Alexa think our record will be this season? That's a great idea. Hey, Alexa, what will the Green Bay Packers regular season record be this year?
Sorry, I don't know that.
She doesn't know that either. See? Alexa knows. You got to wait for camp to play out. Where do you see Green Bay go in the NFL? I don't know what that means. Why not sign Dez? Hey, Marcus, man, I did a whole month of why they should sign Dez Bryant, and the Packers don't listen to me. I really like all the young receivers that we drafted. Is there a scenario where we keep them all? Yeah, I think there is. I think, as I said earlier in the video, a lot of it depends on how they perform on special teams. And don't forget, we've still got D'Angelo Yancey and Michael Clark to deal with. Those guys aren't just going to sit down and acquiesce, they're going to fight for positions as well. So to me, that's going to be the most intriguing roster battle this summer. It starts next week. Is Mark Murphy's salary public? I don't think so. If you're the GM, do you sign some more veterans like Breeland, Bolden? Probably not. I understand the desire to do so, but, they and I, if I'm the GM, I think I like my guys. I've gone through the spring, and I know what I have under my roof, and I'm feeling pretty confident about it, most likely. Who you got, 96 Packers or 2010 Packers? Oh, 96 Packers. It's not even a question. Do you think we let Dix walk next year because of cost? Yeah, I said earlier this summer I think there's a good chance they let him walk, but a lot of it depends. There's so many factors at play. The biggest obviously being what kind of year he has, and how he feels about sticking around. He made it pretty apparent with his wink at Rob Demovsky earlier this offseason that he did stay away because of the contract, and I know there were personal issues around that, but he didn't have any kind of financial ties to having to show up, so he took advantage of that, which is his right. It's not a judgment. But I do sense a little friction there. And, unless the Packers are ready to kind of get down to business, so to speak, early, which I don't think they will be, I think he'd want to test the market. Now, you say all that, but maybe they get through the year, he plays well, the Packers offer him something that isn't exactly, say, top 5 safety money, but in the neighborhood of top 5, maybe just outside. I think, yeah, maybe he gives it consideration, but if I'm a Ha Clinton Dix and he bounces back this year, then he's got a Pro Bowl year under his belt. He's bounced back, so to speak. He's hitting the market. I think that's his one shot to really kind of test the free agency, and I think he'd want to take it. End of the year, do we look back and regret cutting Jordy? I doubt it. Remember, it's always better to get out a year earlier than a year too late. Even if Jordy Nelson has a great year in Oakland, eventually you got to move on. The odds say that, Father Time is going to catch up sooner rather than later, and it certainly seemed to be knocking at the door down the stretch last year. What should we look for in the preseason? I always try and find individual matchups and individual performances, much more so. Don't bother with, the result of games or any of that. I know you guys know this. But, I like to look at, say, especially on the defensive side of the ball, can a guy win a one-on-one? Or some of those younger guys like Beagle or Reggie Gilbert, are they winning one-on-ones on the outside on obvious passing downs? Or are the defensive backs getting up and pressing and winning those battles at the line of scrimmage? I definitely don't get caught up in play calling. Definitely don't get caught up in outcomes of the games. They don't mean anything. Are we keeping Trevor Davis at punt return? I think he'll have an opportunity there, but I also think Jair Alexander will have an opportunity there. And if Alexander beats him out, I think Davis's odds of making the roster are long. Do you think the secondary is ready to break out under Mike Pettin? I think, it's all relative. I mean, break out, you mean actually be set and ready to play at the snap of the football? Yes, I think we will see that. Not having their heads turned, calling out signals as the quarterback is taking the snap? Yes. Playing with everybody who's supposed to be on the field? 11 men instead of 10? Yes. Now, are they ready to be the Legion of Boom reborn? Let's slow down. Let's find out what they have in these young guys first. It's really impossible to say what they have until we see Alexander, Josh Jackson, Kevin King really, under fire, so to speak, once preseason camp, even week 1, week 2 roll around. Can't replace Woodson. Couldn't agree more. 3rd and 14, our nemesis on defense, no doubt. Connor Barwin or Macklin you got? Randy, no. I don't see either one of those guys coming to Green Bay. Do you think Edgar Bennett was fired due to Hundley not being ready? No. I think Edgar Bennett was, allowed to leave simply because Mike wanted a fresh voice. I wanted to bring back Joe Philbin more than anything else. I just think, it just didn't click with Edgar the way he had hoped it would. And I do get the sense, and this isn't, this is just from talking to people around the team, I get a sense that things have gotten a little stagnant. And that's not to do with Hundley in specifics. I do think Alex Van Pelt was allowed to leave, being allowed to leave had a little something to do with Hundley's performance, but we'll never get anybody to talk straight about that. Saw your daughter wearing Aaron Rodgers' jersey. Yes, she loves the jersey. She loves Aaron Rodgers. She doesn't watch football. Not even that she hates football. She just doesn't care about football. She just likes the way the jersey looks. Is Aaron Rodgers going to play with a chip on his chip on his shoulder this season, in your opinion? Yes. Give me a Stephen A. Smith take on the Packers. Matt, you want Stephen A. Smith, you can go watch ESPN. I think that's not my gig. Thoughts on Ripkowski? Nicholas, I'm interested to see how he and Carriage, what kind of opportunities they're given early in camp, because that could go a long way in letting us know how the staff is feeling about them. I mean, it's no mystery. Aaron Ripkowski kind of disappeared as a ball carrier last year after 2 years ago. He carried it quite a little bit. Last year, not only disappearing as a ball carrier, but they really kind of reduced his playing time. And, they did, Carriage was brought back in November on the practice squad and then activated for those last couple games. I think they really like him. And as I've said here many times, I thought he was ready to push for a spot last summer before he got hurt. So that's a position worth watching and a battle worth watching, no doubt. All right, everybody, I'm going to have to jump. Thank you so much for all the questions. I'm sorry if I couldn't get to yours. Make sure you're checking PackersNews.com for all the latest. Like I said earlier, we've got the running back positional preview. Just went up a little while ago. Make sure you check that out. We've got anything and everything having to do with the Green Bay Packers. We'll have it covered for you at PackersNews.com. Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a great night.